Colorado, Carolina, or Quebec and Hartford lives up to the hype and then some. The young stars exploded tonight across the NHL as the goals piled up, and the Oilers offense might actually be awake. All that and more tonight on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of all of the night's action in the NHL during the regular season and, of course, in the playoffs. We are available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Alex Wiederspiel. He's Shukri Wright. Shukri Wrights, here on Locked On NHL Game Night, where you can get the latest on all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the NHL, with a big assist from our Locked On local expert. Shukri, what a night of games. I remember texting you at the beginning of the night being like, these matchups are a little weird. I don't know how I feel about these. And by the end of the night, I was like, well, that was a roller coaster experience.
I mean, it sure was. It was a night full of great games, but I tell you what, if you are a fan of any of these teams, it was like, man, there's a lot of entertainment, but then there are some teams that are feeling like, man, I sure as hell got my face punched in, but let's talk about it all and let's get through it all, shall we? Let's ride.
Yes, we will. We're going to start in, I guess technically we're starting in Colorado, but tonight they called themselves Quebec City, for however anyone felt about that. Heck of a game, Heritage Night. So Carolina, or Hartford, opened the scoring in this one 1-0. They actually jumped out to a 4-1 lead. Got a goal from Sebastian Aho. Seth Jarvis picks up an apple in this one. Logan Stankoven scores a goal. And then that's when Scott Wedgwood gets the bench. And Mackenzie Blackwood not available due to injury. So in comes 24-year-old Trent Miner in just his third career appearance. He'd only played 91 minutes of NHL hockey. He actually came in and sparked the Avs, stops all 20 shots that he faced. And the Avs, or the Nordiques, whatever we're calling them, they fought back. Parker Kelly scores a goal. Martin Nietzsche scores his sixth goal. And then Valeri Nichushkin, what the Avs have been threatening to do all night, finally scores on their seventh power play attempt of the night to force overtime. 4-4 in the third. It was a gong show, nonstop parade to the box, ultimately goes to a shootout. And finally, in the shootout, the deed is done by Carolina / Hartford in this one. Shukri, what a win for Carolina. They let a 4-1 lead slip away, but ultimately they get the job done.
I mean, talk about a game of resilience. That's exactly what it was. And ultimately, when it's all said and done, I think the one thing that you're going to kick yourself like a little bit is in this game is the amount of trips you made to the penalty boxes. I mean, my goodness, like you thought you were going on a field trip, like on summer camp, with the way that you saw penalty on this player, penalty on that player, or whatnot. But what I will say ultimately is that, what you saw was both the strength and the firepower of Carolina at its full might when they're playing their A game. What you also saw was the full strength and the might of the Colorado Avalanche when they played their full game, except Scott Wedgwood was pretty much sent to the chipper early, unfortunately. but with that being said, I'm not surprised that this was a tremendous game. I mean, the goaltending wasn't really there for much of the night on either side. I mean, sure, for Carolina until they blew the lead, the 4-1 lead. But I do think that ultimately, Carolina, they were able to finally figure things out and get past the Avalanche in the shootout.
Let's hear from Locked On Hurricanes, Zach Martin, with the final word on, again, Carolina, Hartford, whatever we're calling them tonight, with the win.
The Carolina Hurricanes win 5-4 in a shootout against the Colorado Avalanche in what was a insane game in the Mile High City. Up 4-1, Avalanche come back and make it 4-4 to force overtime. Frederik Andersen making 44-48 saves, the most in one game in his career. Seth Jarvis and Sebastian Aho both get up to a 7-game point streak with goals each. Hurricanes losing Eric Robinson and William Carey in the middle of the game. Didn't have Keandre Miller going into the game, despite being in the pregame skates. It was just an insane night. A slew of penalties on both sides. This was a instant classic, but in a way that was straight up 80s chaotic hockey from start to finish. But the Hurricanes are now 6-1-0 on the season, 4-1-0 on the road trip with one more game left on Saturday against Dallas. And man, if you weren't watching this game, you missed out on a very old school Adams Division classic in 2025.
Ain't that the truth? Let's hear the final word on this one from Locked On Colorado or Quebec City. Chris Maselli has the word.
The Hartford Whalers and the Quebec Nordiques skate to an early season classic that saw the Whalers win this thing in the coin flip session, which you also know as the shootout, 5-4. But what a game in total that saw the Avalanche climb back from this thing. As great as Scott Wedgwood has been playing, really since the beginning of the season, he got pulled in this one, gave up 4 goals in the first period. And the Avalanche climbed back. They bring in inexperienced backup Trent Miner, who held things down well enough to let the Avs climb back in this thing and tie it late in the third, where they finally got a power play goal. And if you want to point to something that is the Achilles heel for the Colorado Avalanche, and if they could have some sort of semblance of a power play, this game would have gone 2 points to the Avalanche. 1 out of 8 for the Avs on the power play. It's been a problem all season. They switched things up and brought Val Nichushkin in the third period on the power play. And he's the one that got the lone power play goal for them. So you can probably see them changing that going forward. But overall, this is why you watch hockey games. And I know the Avalanche are on the losing end of this, but they did get a point, which they still have not lost in regulation so far this season. But just from a hockey fan perspective, this was as good as it gets. This was as fun as it gets. And they're going to wear these 2 uniforms against each other again later in the season in Carolina. So definitely tune into that one. But overall, just a wonderful, wonderful hockey game.
All right, we'll move on at this point to a game that I did not expect to be in our first segment, Shukri. New York Rangers, San Jose Sharks, and ultimately the Sharks get the better of the Rangers in this one in a game that changed leads multiple times, and this was sort of the big story of the night across the NHL. The young stars have arrived. Macklin Celebrini with a hat trick and 5 points, including forcing the turnover and then the assist on the winning goal in overtime. The Sharks finally get on the board with a win.
It certainly was critical for the Sharks to, finally get the first W underneath the belt. But here's the problem. It came at the expense of the New York Rangers, who simply cannot find a way to get a W at home, which is really hard to believe. And obviously the big event of the night was the Matt Rempe versus Ryan Reeves fight at MSG. I mean, fight night sure as hell came on the ice, and fans didn't leave disappointed. But ultimately, the New York Rangers, they're searching for answers right now. Whereas to what's the deal or what's going on at home, because they can't seem to find any sort of answers as to why they can't win at MSG right now.
It's true, and Rempe would leave after that fight and not return with an upper body injury, so we'll keep an eye on that. The Rangers' fourth line had actually been surprisingly effective this season. Let's hear from JD Young of Locked On Sharks.
Winless no more, as the San Jose Sharks finally get one. I'm JD Young of Locked On Sharks, and all it took was a Macklin Celebrini hat trick plus 2 assists, a Will Smith 4-point night with 2 goals and 2 assists, and the Sharks finally break through with their first win of the season. An absolutely entertaining game, a 6-5 overtime win against the New York Rangers. Macklin Celebrini showing why he's one of the brightest superstars in the NHL, or budding superstars in the NHL, with a hat trick tonight. Then primary assists on the Will Smith goal, on both of Will Smith's goals, including stealing the puck in overtime and getting it over to Will Smith. William Eklund also had 3 assists tonight. Just a wonderful night for the young Sharks players as they finally get their first win. We'll break it down on your next episode of Locked On Sharks, wherever you get podcasts. And of course, watch on YouTube as well.
Kind of an embarrassing night in some ways for the New York Rangers. Let's move on to another game, one that I think you thought was one of, if not the best of the night, Utah and St. Louis. And it certainly didn't start that way. It started with another young star absolutely exploding, a guy I had been a little critical of for his slow start to the season, Logan Cooley, man, with a natural hattie and 4 points in this one. But St. Louis made a game of this one late, final 7-4. But the Blues, despite being down 4-0 early, they were within one goal in the third period, Shukri.
They were certainly, making a point to not give up at all. But, you got to like what you saw from in regards to Logan Cooley, who had a natural hat trick in the first period, which goes to show you how wild and how wonky of a game it was. Not taking anything away from Cooley, but the Blues' tenacity and their fight to come back into this game and make it a 5-4 game, despite the Blues falling short, speaks volumes. I thought that ultimately, the Blues were able to find their game later in the game, but at that point, it was still too little, too late for St. Louis.
All right, so the final youth explosion of the night, Chicago, Tampa, is actually the first game of the night. Weirdly, I couldn't find out why it started at 6:45. I'm sure somebody knows why, but it was the
ESPN Plus doubleheader.
Hey, there you go. Perfect. I was really surprised by that, but I was pleased to see a game a little bit ahead. Chicago winds up getting the win in this one thanks to a late goal with less than a minute to go in regulation and dropping Tampa, who remains in last place in the division for the first time since February of 2017. But it was Frank Nazar with 2 points in this one. And Nazar scored a goal on the power play, and he set up the winner late in this one for Ryan Donato, created a chance with his speed late, and Donato finished the rebound off the Nazar chance. And listen, I think Connor Bedard's been playing really, really well so far, but this was Frank Nazar's show tonight for the Blackhawks, who get the win.
Honestly, I think it was the Ryan Donato show only because, one, he had the 2 goals in this game, but also he's been on fire as of late. He's had 5 goals in the last, if I'm not mistaken, I think the last 6 or 7 games. So he's been on a tear offensively, and tonight, especially in a type of game where it was tight, it was very much like a back and forth affair. You saw Ryan Donato rise to the occasion. But as well as you gotta give credit to to Frank Nazar as well. But also Nikita Kucherov, he's always dangerous. But in tonight's game, he certainly had his imprint on this game for the Lightning as well. But the Chicago Blackhawks ultimately able to prevail.
Yeah, nice 2-assist night for Kucherov, who needed it. He had started off surprisingly slow. Speaking of players who started off surprisingly slow, we're going to talk about one of them. Many consider him, rightfully so, the best player in the world. And there was nothing slow about his game tonight. Connor McDavid doing Connor McDavid things and spoiling a multi-goal effort from prospective Olympian Cole Caulfield. All that and more coming up on Locked On NHL Game Night. But first, let's be real. Making excuses does not solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rougit comes in. Rougit.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. They make it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast. It's simple, it's private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Our show also brought to you in part today by our friends over at Game Time. Hockey season is here, guys. That's what we're doing here. Nothing beats those opening games. Nothing beats being in the arena for them. But let's be real, getting tickets, that can be a headache sometimes. And between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Game Night comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets. Fast, easy, stress-free. It's a great way to find tickets, especially when you're like me. I am a New York Rangers fan, though granted I'm wearing some Yotes stuff in honor of the teams that don't exist tonight. But if you're a Ranger fan like me and you live near Pittsburgh or Columbus, you want to find the best road seats you can possibly get, and you can do it cheap. You can find tickets on Game Time for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. All right, so Shukri, we got a couple of big games that went on tonight that somehow didn't make the first segment because that's how wild tonight's were. But I wanted to start with a game that just, as soon as I thought to myself, well, this one's starting to seem like it's over, it became the Connor McDavid show. So the big story, 2 goals tonight from Alex Newhook, 2 goals tonight from Cole Caulfield. Our friend Cam seems to think Cole Caulfield could be a prospective Olympian. Well, that audition got spoiled tonight as Connor McDavid picks up 3 apples tonight, helping Edmonton come from behind 5-3 to make it 6-5 and win it in regulation. It's the 3rd time that Montreal has lost a game this season where they either tied or led going into the 3rd period.
Now bueno, especially if you're a team that is trying to ensure that you don't fall into bad habits. This was it. I'm going to keep it very short and brief. But, it was a wild affair in Edmonton, no question about it. And of course, anytime that you have Leon Draisaitl scoring on a power play, and as well as Ryan Nugent-Hopkins firing offensively, and as you mentioned, Connor McDavid, he had 3 assists in this game, Edmonton is due to be cooking. But Montreal was certainly not to be outdone, and it's part of the reason why they're so excited for the young core, because guys like Alex Newhook and Cole Caulfield, they both scored twice, and they're going to be a vital part of the Montreal youth movement moving forward. So as far as the game is concerned, they cannot have what happened happen again, where you're either tied or you're leading late in the game, and you're ultimately not able to get the job done and get that second point.
Let's hear quickly from Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers.
Oh, if the Oilers happened to be involved in the Louvre robbery last week. Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers here after an absolute stunner of a 6-5 win in regulation against the Montreal Canadiens on a night where the Oilers played one of their worst games of the season, where Montreal pulled off a multi-goal comeback, got out to a multi-goal lead. Somehow, some way, the Oilers were able to get to work. They were able to draw penalties. They were able to force Montreal into some mistakes. And when you have Connor, when you have Leon, you're able to hang around. And on a night where the Oilers couldn't get a whole lot going, it was their stars that got them back in this game and put them in a position to be able to have a chance to win. But big picture-wise, the Edmonton Oilers have a lot of work to do. This is their 3rd straight unimpressive performance, and they've largely been carried by their marquee players. David Tomashek picked up his first career NHL goal as a 29-year-old rookie. That's always exciting, but the Oilers have a lot of work to do to figure out all of their problems.
From Edmonton to Los Angeles, much like our friend Ken Holland. And it was kind of a Ken Holland night for the Kings. 2 of his big acquisitions who have let's be frank, one hasn't played much. The other has struggled. Both scored tonight. Corey Perry gets his first goal as an LA King. What a weird sentence that is. And Los Angeles ultimately gets the job done despite Dallas coming back a couple of times thanks to goals from their stars, Jason Robertson, Wyatt Johnston, and it was Quentin Byfield. My man, I love watching Quentin Byfield play. No one that size should be able to skate like that, and Quentin Byfield used that speed to force a turnover in overtime and set up the game winner for Adrian Kempe, who I'm pretty sure did a horns down sign when he scored that goal. LA wins one badly needed for our friend Eddie Garcia, 3-2 in overtime. Shoe.
Hopefully, somehow, our friend Eddie is actually smiling brightly. But as far as the Kings, they should be smiling brightly tonight because, I mean, Corey Perry, welcome to the Los Angeles Kings. Like, I mean, it was great certainly seeing him scoring tonight, but also Adrian Kempe, who's really become one of my very favorite hockey players around the NHL. Like he came up huge, he came up clutch for the Kings, 37 seconds to be exact, into OT. So you really got to like what you saw. But as far as Dallas is concerned, I do think that ultimately they did get quality goaltending from like they I mean the Kings they got it from Darcy on Kemper as well. But Ottinger was not bad at all. He made 22 saves in this one, but the Kings, like they sure a lot of fight on the road tonight in Dallas against a quality Western Conference opponent.
Now, speaking of another Ken Holland former team, here's the Detroit Red Wings, who had a rough one tonight. Nothing went right. Back end of a back-to-back. They lost last night against Buffalo. I thought the Sabres played an inspired game. I wouldn't necessarily say that Detroit played a bad game, but tonight they played a bad game as the New York Islanders blow out the Detroit Red Wings in a game where I think the score actually does the Red Wings some favors. 7-2 the final in this one. Locked On Islanders, Gil Martin has the rest.
Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders here. The Islanders skate to an easy 7-2 win over the Detroit Red Wings. The Islanders got off to a good start and never really looked back, hitting on all cylinders. 3 assists for Anders Lee, 2 goals for Emil Heineman. But the beautiful thing about this, a complete team effort. The Islanders, 3 of the 4 lines played well. David Riddick played well, and the Islanders were consistent throughout the game, never really letting up. And even though Matthew Schaefer did not register a point for the first time in his career, he still played really well. So all is well there. That's 4 straight wins for the Islanders. We'll see if they can build on it Saturday in Philadelphia. For all things Islanders, check out the Locked On Islanders podcast.
And we thank Gil. Pittsburgh and Florida, our final game of the segment. And how about this? The champs now fall to a game under 500. They have looked a little rough of late outside of a wonky bounce against Boston on Brad Marchand night. Sidney Crosby turning back the clock with 3 points, 2 goals tonight. And the Penguins get a 5-3 win over Florida. Real quick, Shu, before we go to break, are the Penguins, are they for real?
I don't think so, not as of yet. I haven't seen enough to be able to say whether they're definitely for real as one of the top contenders in the Eastern Conference. But you do have to like the strong start they have gotten off to so far. And Sidney Crosby has certainly led the way in which that he, as you mentioned, he's turned the clock back a little bit, but he hasn't had to really do that because he's still Sidney Crosby. He's still the bad man that he is, the OG on the block when it comes to being the best player in the world that he is still.
It's true. It is very much true. All right. Hey, we are going to go ahead and take one final break. We still got 4 games to get to, including an absolutely bonkers game in Boston tonight that featured 12 goals. We're back right after this. But first, want to remind you folks that our show is brought to you in part by FanDuel. NFL season is here, and FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 $100 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, my friends love using FanDuel to place their bets, especially the East Coasters who are just looking for any reason to stay up late and watch the West Coast games. Unlike me, who I actually have a reason to do that, they are looking for any reason possible, and they will utilize FanDuel well for that reason. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. Now, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today to get started. All right, Shu, 4 more games to get to. We're going to start with Seattle and Winnipeg, which was one of the quieter games tonight. There were not 12 goals in this one. The Seattle Kraken actually got a pretty nice performance from Joey Daccord. He stops 32 shots, and even though the Jets double up Seattle in high-danger chances in this game, they can't solve Daccord. Jaden Schwartz, an original Kraken, if that makes any sense, had a 3-point night, and they win 3-0. Seattle improves to 4-2-2. Nice start for the Kraken.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for a team that needed this type of start badly, this has been a really encouraging sign to see, especially getting quality goaltending from Joey Daccord. And Jaden Schwartz, a former St. Louis Blue, by the way, he had 2 goals in this one as well. So I think for the Seattle Kraken, it's encouraging to see that they continue to play good, sound hockey, getting quality goaltending, and as well as like the belief that if they can execute their game plan, like they basically feel that they can play with any team in the league.
All right, let's move over to Beantown, where it was a struggle tonight for Boston. It seemed like every time they had an answer, Anaheim had an answer for that answer, and ultimately Anaheim scores 7 times. Now, that does include 1 empty netter, but this was a game where the lead changed regularly. One maybe good sign for Boston, another goal for Casey Middlestad, who has responded well to getting scratched earlier in the season. But Anaheim, 7 goals in this one, 7-5 final. They are now 4-2-1. And the early Joel Quenneville experiment has worked well. This is back-to-back road wins for the Ducks. First in Nashville, then in Boston. They're looking pretty decent to start.
They've looked decent so far, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the career night that Mikael Granlund had, having 5 points, an NHL career high for him in this one against the Bruins, and as well as like Nikita Nesterenko, who had a career high 4 points as well. That goes to tell you like how much those guys littered the score sheet in the 7 goals that the Ducks scored. But man, certainly a rough going for the Bruins, who after a pretty promising start have fallen to earth quite a bit.
3-6 now, 3-6-0, I guess, technically in our NHL terms. Moving on to Philadelphia and Ottawa. This was one of the quieter games of the night. Philadelphia opens up the scoring in this one, take a 1-0 lead. Ottawa would score the next 2 and ultimately get the job done. It was former Penn and Capital star Lars Eller who got the dish to Ali Leixel, who just slammed it home from point-blank range to make it 2-1 Ottawa. That would ultimately be the winner. Ottawa felt like this one was much needed. They have not gotten good goaltending much of this season, and they certainly have been missing Brady Tkachuk. They take care of business against Philadelphia.
They certainly have been missing Brady Tkachuk tremendously, but you got to give credit where credit's due. Linus Ullmark played a tremendous game. So did Dan Vladar. Vladar played a pretty good game in that, but the fact of the matter is that for the Flyers, like going 0-for-3 in a power play did not do them any sort of favors whatsoever. And ultimately, like the Senators took advantage of the mistakes that the Flyers made. Michael Amadio and Ali Leixel, with them scoring the goals for Ottawa, I think ultimately, the Senator team, they still have they still have the opportunity to to put themselves into good position. I mean, obviously, it's only 8 games into the season, but this is a team that is still finding a way despite not having Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, I actually kind of liked how both teams played tonight, all things considered in this one. Didn't love how Vancouver played against Nashville. Didn't really love how either team played in this game, but Nashville does get the win 2-1. Now, the good news for Vancouver, Brock Besser back and actually looked pretty active, 5 shots on goal. They had been missing him Vancouver has dealt with a lot of injuries to start the season. So he was much, much needed in his return. But Nashville ultimately gets the win tonight. Again, weird one. Ryan O'Reilly with a shorthanded goal. Max Sesson responds with the game winner tonight as well after Vancouver tied it up. Weird one, but ultimately Nashville gets the W, especially good response after I did not think they played well at all against Anaheim.
They play like complete garbage against Anaheim, but I will give UC Soros credit, like the 21-6 performance against the Vancouver Canucks, in which, like, let's face it, the Predators needed to win this game badly to end their 4-game losing streak. Dasher Demko, he made 33 saves in this one. Again, neither goaltender was bad, but I will say that when you have been struggling as far as much as Nashville has been struggling this season, you need anything and something good to happen, and it sure did for Ryan O'Reilly, which gave this team a bit of a spark.
Yeah, 3-3-2 for Nashville. Inauspicious start, to say the least. Shoo, what a night, man. Unbelievable night. There's so much more that we couldn't talk about with every game, but guess what? That's what our Dayside crew will talk about tomorrow. If you want complete coverage of your favorite NHL team, there is a Locked On NHL Team podcast and a YouTube show for you, because we have one for every NHL team. New Jersey, new guy is en route, and we are still working on Calgary. This show, of course, Locked On NHL Game Night, is here for you each and every night of the regular season and the playoffs, wrapping up the night in the NHL, your first reactions. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this show if you're watching on YouTube. We want to see your thoughts on tonight's games in the comment section. Has the youth movement taken over the NHL after big nights from Celebrini, Cooley, Nazar, and the like? That will do it for this episode, though, of Locked On NHL Game Night. For Shukri Wrights, I'm Alex Wiederspiel. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.